We will be going quite deeply into the month, and we'll be talking about some deep concepts, understanding some of the meanings of the time we're in. And I'm not talking just about the period we're in terms of what's going on in the world and what's going on in Israel and the war. I'm talking about this period of the year and of this year. And our sensitivity to the year, to understanding what's happening cosmically in the world, is through the months. That's how we get a sense of what's happening in the world cosmically. The astrologists came close to it. They noticed that something changes every 4 weeks or so. And they noticed there's a correlation between the energy of the world, the energy of the universe, and the constellations. What they didn't realize, it's got nothing to do with the constellations. It's got to do with the month. The constellations are tied to the month. What's important about this month that has been is that it's Cheshvan. Whatever is happening in the world is because it's Cheshvan. Part of the energy of the month are the constellations, as we'll see, and we'll learn the Sefer Yetzirah. But it's about the month. It's not about the constellation. So we'll start with the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Hamahalech baderech v'shoneo mafsik b'mishnato v'omer ma na'eh ilan ze u'ma na'eh nir ze. If a person's walking along the road and he's learning as he walks, possibly with a colleague, with a friend, and they're talking in Torah as they're walking, and they stop to admire the beauty of a landscape, would you say that's a good thing to do or a bad thing to do? Clearly that's a good thing to do, to notice that there's a beautiful landscape. But as we know, Rabbi Shimon says, the Torah treats him as if he's committed a capital offense. It's so serious. Really? What's so serious? They're walking and they're talking in Torah and they pause to look at a beautiful sight. What would be so serious? Says Rabbeinu Yoel, כי בעוד שהאדם שונה אין לו להשיח שיחת חולין, כי צריך לעמוד ביראה ואימה לפני התורה. Doing so shows you have no clue what Torah is. The same as I've said with Daf Yomi, that to be able to learn a daf in a day means you've got no clue what Gemara is. It would be like saying, like going to university and saying, yeah, I want to learn physics, and I want to do chemistry as well. A couple of other subjects, maths throw in as well, and I do a bit of English literature as well, and I've got an hour a day. It shows you don't get a clue of what you're looking at. To think that you can learn a daf Gemara in an hour means you have no clue what Gemara is. And says Rabbeinu Yoel, to be in the middle of learning and look at the Alps and be impressed by the Alps when you're discussing a Tosfos, clearly you don't know what a Tosfos is. Not that the Alps aren't magnificent. Of course they are. They're incredible. You look at a beautiful lake, you look at a river, you look at a beautiful tree, a forest. Unbelievably beautiful. But not next to the Torah. And if it is beautiful next to the Torah, it means you haven't got the Torah yet. You just don't get the Torah. Doesn't mean that you're overestimating the value and the beauty of the landscape. It means that you just don't get the Torah. Because if you did get the Torah, it wouldn't happen. Imagine you're on a train traveling through Europe, and into the carriage walks King Charles and sits down opposite you and engages you in conversation. And you keep on looking out the window and losing track of what he's talking about. You're talking to a king. You don't understand the beautiful mountains. The mountains will still be there tomorrow. You can come back and look at them another day. Right now, you're having a conversation with the king. What are you doing? That's what's happening when you're learning Torah. The mountains will be there tomorrow, but the Tosfos won't be there. The idea that you have, that thought that you had when you understood a Mishnah or a piece of Gemara or a Rashi or a Tosfos, that's not going to be there tomorrow. That comes and it goes in a flash. And you're willing to miss the flash? See, we don't understand with Torah. It's not that the page is there and you can come to it at any time. The Torah is something that's passing. You get these flashes of inspiration and they don't come back again. If you don't make a note of them, you even forget them. You can't even come back to the same flash. And if you do come back to the same flash, it's not the same anymore. It's not fresh anymore. It doesn't have that brilliance anymore. You'll never have that opportunity again. That flash of inspiration you have when you're learning a piece of Torah, it's at that moment and at that moment only. And at that moment, you're looking at the Alps. So you don't get it, you've missed it. That's the meaning of the Mishnah, explains Rabbeinu Yoel. My cousin Rabbi Lapin, Zichron Livracha, he was Rebellia's son, in the Rosh Yeshiva of Gateshead. He used to explain this differently. His view was, there's nothing wrong with it at all. The Mishnah is not criticizing you for looking at the Alps when you're busy learning. The Mishnah is criticizing you for mafsik mi mishnato. The fact that you stop learning in order to admire the Alps instead of integrating it into your learning. That's how he understands it. And I think I heard that Yoshe Soloveitchik said something similar. That you've got to be able to integrate. You have to stop learning in order to see beauty. That means that you don't understand Torah. So it's two different approaches. The Rabbeinu Yonah is a Rishon. He's talking about people who really get Torah. We don't get Torah the way Rabbeinu Yonah could get Torah. He's talking for his generation. So for his generation to stop learning and admire the Alps, that's you don't get Torah. The way Rabbi Lapin learns it more is, the problem is that you divide it, that you bifurcate learning and life. The fact that you stop learning to admire something beautiful, that's a problem. You should be able to integrate it. It should be part of your learning and part of your life. And we have, there's a posuk in Yeshayahu, Su'u marom enechem uru'u mi vara ele, says the Novi Yeshayahu, lift your eyes up to the heavens, look at the sky, look at the stars, and consider, reflect, who created them? It's a way of getting to Yerushalim. By looking at nature, you can develop fear of God and understanding of God and appreciation of God and the Torah. How Hashem brings the stars out at different times and moves them around the sky, calling each one by its own name. He gives so much energy to each star that, as the scientists say, millions of years later, we still see them. They're still burning. That's how much power he put into each star. Stop and think a moment. Who is it that did that? That's what you can gain from looking at nature, which supports Rabbi Lapin's approach of integrated. Look at nature and see Hashem. Look at Hashem and see nature. There was a very great Hasidic master, one of the early Rabbeim, who was known as the Saraf Moglitza. Moglitza is a town in Poland between Warsaw and Lublin. There used to be an important Jewish community there for centuries, until the Holocaust. And the Saraf Moglitza, it's called the Angel of Moglitza, was a Talmid of the Chozeh Lublin. The Chozeh Lublin was the Talmid of the Baal Shem Tov. So this is early Hasidic tradition. And there was a lot of wonderful Kabbalah was being explored and understood and taught at that particular time. And he asks the question and says, why then are there so many scientists who are atheists? Surely if you're studying the world, you're going to believe in God. That's how God could design the world. That's what Yeshayahu says. Look at the world and see, consider. That's what Rabbi Lapin says. Incorporate in your learning. Look at the world and see what it is. Surely you can. That's his question. And he answers it with another pasuk. He answers it with a pasuk of Ma gadlu ma'asecha Hashem ma'od amku machshavotecha ish ba lo yeda uchsid lo yavin et zot. We say it in Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbos several times every week. How great are your deeds, Hashem? Your thoughts are so deep. Ma'od amku machshavotecha. Your thoughts are so unbelievably deep that ish ba lo yeda. An ishbar means an ignorant person or an unwise person or an uncouth person. An unrefined person doesn't know, and a fool can't understand it. Explains Reb Chaim Meir Yechiel Shapiro, who was the Saraf Moglitza. His artistry is so deep. Ma'od amku machshavotecha. His artistry is so deep that an ordinary person looks at it and doesn't get it. So think for a moment. Has anybody been to the Louvre and looked at the Mona Lisa? Did you look at that painting and think, wow, who understands that it's a good painting? The experts. When it comes to great art, if the ordinary person says, wow, it's not great art. That's what you have to understand. If you hear a piece of music, the music that they play nowadays at weddings, never mind the music that the general world plays. The music that they play at weddings, which is not that much different from what they play in nightclubs, I'm told. Same stuff, different words. And everybody loves it. If everybody loves it, it's not great. It can't be. When something is loved only by connoisseurs, you know it's great. When you look at a painting of Leonardo da Vinci or a painting of Rembrandt, and people who understand art look at it and say, oh my goodness, wow. If you're a person who's incredibly evolved and you understand it, and nobody else understands it, that's a sign that it's great. It's not a sign that it's not great. Popularism and greatness don't go hand in hand. Popularism and greatness are actually two opposite sides of the spectrum. What is popular is not great, cannot be great. What is great cannot be popular. That's how it is. And therefore, explains the Saraf Mimaglanitza. The brilliance of Hashem's Bria is that the ordinary person looks at it and doesn't see anything amazing. That's the brilliance. The brilliance is you have to be an evolved human being to be able to look at the creation and see Hashem. Like you've got to be an evolved artistic connoisseur to look at the Mona Lisa and say, my goodness, this is unbelievable. Just look at it. You've got to understand something about it. You've got to be a developed person. The ordinary person doesn't get it. Some of you will have heard me tell the story when my father went to look at the Mona Lisa. The guard over there, the docent standing by, comes up to him afterwards because my father stood a long time in front of the Mona Lisa. And he said, what do you think of it? My father said, okay, if I'm going to be honest, I don't think much of it. I tried, I stood there in front of it for a long time. I don't get it. I mean, it's a pretty picture, nice lady, but I don't get it. He said, I wasn't actually asking for your opinion about the Mona Lisa. I just wanted to know whether you understand art or whether you're an ignoramus. And I think you're clearly an ignoramus. And he walked off. A French docent's not afraid to talk to people like that. That's the olam. Somebody says, I'm a scientist and I don't believe in God. So you say, well, all you're telling me is you're an ignoramus. You're dumb. That's all you're an unevolved person. That's all you're telling me about yourself. You might be intelligent, but you don't understand ruchnis, you don't understand the spiritual, you don't understand the complexity of reality. You only understand your little area of speciality. That's what it tells me. And therefore, the way to look at the world is through the lens of Torah. If you want to understand, if you want to get to the position of Su'u Maroma Enechem Uru'u Mi Bara Ele, the way you do that is through the lens of Torah. And that's what Rabbi Lapin meant when he said, you shouldn't be mafsik. To stop learning Torah in order to look at the world, you're going to miss the world. It's not just that you don't get Torah, you don't get the world either. Because the way you're really going to appreciate the world is looking at it through the lens of the Torah and seeing the boire behind the Bria, seeing the artist behind the art, That's when you really get it and you understand the godliness of the boire. You understand the greatness of the boire because of your perception of it. So we've got Rabbeinu Yonah, who says if you're into Torah, you wouldn't be distracted by anything, no matter how magnificent. You wouldn't be distracted from Torah if you're into it. We've got Rabbi Lapin explaining that you can look at the wonders of nature. You should do so, but look at it through Torah, not separate from Torah. And then you've got a third approach, which is that of Rav Kook. And Rav Kook says in the third section of his Shmone Kevotzim, his 8 journals that he wrote during different periods of his life, and we have them. I've spoken about them often in the Matmonim because I'm working on them at the moment, and they're all that we have that Rav Kook actually wrote himself by his own hand. Everything else has been put together by his son and his Talmidim, but the Shmone Kevotzim is his own, and it's poetic. It's published today in 2 volumes, but it's really 8 journals, 8 volumes of poetry in terms of understanding the world. And he says, on this Mishnah, Ki sof kol sof mikol haolam or hachayim zoreachu. After all, he says, if you look at the world, there's the light of life shines through it. You can perceive the energy of life, the vitality of life can be perceived looking at nature and at the world. Aval min haTorah shofea or chayim dechayim. But when you study the Torah, you're seeing the light of the light of life. Beautiful concept. You want to see the light of life, the vitality of life, look at nature. But if you want to see the light that energizes that light of life, that's in the Torah. And why would you leave the original source of energy in order to admire a reflection? What you're seeing in the Bria is a reflection of an energy that appears in the Torah itself. And you're ignoring the thing and looking at the reflection. Why would you do that? Why not look at the source itself? There's more beauty. There's more energy. There's more light in understanding the Torah than in looking at the Alps. As beautiful as the Alps are, as beautiful as the lakes and the rivers and the forests are, magnificently beautiful. But their beauty, their energy of life, comes from within the Torah. So that's how Rav Kook explains it. So what does that tell us? That in the world there is an enormous amount of energy in the world. And this brings us to the concept which I'm sure you've heard many times of Or HaGanuz, the hidden light. The light that is put into Geniza, hidden away. And what does that mean? Chazal tell us in Bereshis that originally all this light was in the world. So when the world had its full light, and that light means energy, and that light means clarity, and that light means enlightenment, it means all of those things. At that time, if a scientist, no matter how atheistic he was, would look at nature, he would instantly become a tzaddik. It would be so overwhelmingly obvious what the world is about and who Hashem is and how. That's what that or means. There would be such clarity. You would be looking at the kedusha of the Ribono Shel Olam himself through the bria, through nature. But because of the chet, Hashem took that light and he buried it. For tzaddikim in a later time, the Chazal tell us, where did he bury it? I've always been interested. When I learned that Chumash, I must have been 6 years old when I learned that the first time in Rashi and Bereshis, and I remember asking my father, and he didn't give me an answer, and I've been searching ever since. Where did he bury it? Let's go and find it. Doesn't say he destroyed it. He buried it somewhere. It's there. It's available. Why wouldn't we go looking for it? If you hear there's gold somewhere, you go looking for it. There's diamonds somewhere, you go searching for them. Where's the Or HaGanuz? Why didn't we go looking for it? And only over Shabbos, preparing for this year, I found the map. I know where it is. I know where the treasure is buried, and I can take you there. It's accessible. One can actually get there. The Or HaGanuz. And who taught me where it is? I had to go quite a way back in history, not just to the 18th century of the Saraf Mimaglinitza, but I had to go back much further back to the 12th century. That's like 50, 60 years after the time of Rashi. We have the Rokeach. The Rokeach is a Baal Tosfos, is one of the early Baalei Tosfos, soon after the time of Rashi. So we're going back we're going back 1,000 years. And he says the following: Tiknu Lamed Vav Neirot. Why are there 36 candles? You're an actuary, right? So is that right? 36 candles for Hanukkah. Why 36 candles? Keneged Haor Harishon Shishimesh LaAdam Harishon Lamed Vav Shaot. Adam had sight of that first light for 36 hours. It was created on Thursday night. The world still had that light. Through Thursday night, through the whole of Friday, that's until he did his chet. So it's Thursday night till Friday night is 24 hours, till the next morning, and that's when Hashem hides it away. So for 36 hours, Adam had access to that light. And because of those 36 hours, we light 36 candles. So we see a linkage already that on Hanukkah, in the month of Kislev, it's easier to access that light than it is at any time of the year. Furthermore, says the Rokeach, and by the way, the Bnei Yisachar, who was another Talmid of the Chozeh Lublin, that same period of the late 18th century, the Bnei Yisachar was also a student of the Chozeh Lublin. And he says everything the Rokeach says comes from Eliyahu Hanovi. He didn't make it up. He didn't work it out. Everything the Rokeach writes comes from Eliyahu Hanovi. Furthermore, he says, Al ot tet shel vayar Elokim et haor ki tov. In the Torah where it says, and Hashem saw the light and it was good, yesh al hatet daled tagin. There are 4 little marks on the top of the tet that form those little ktarim, those crowns on top of the letters in the Torah. If you look in the Sefer Torah itself, on the tet of Tov, you will find 4 little marks. Lahorot dalet pa'amim tet, to remind you that that's 4 times 9. Tet is 9, 4 times 9. To see in that light 36. And to realize the connection between the goodness of that light, which lasted for 36 hours of human life, and Hanukkah, which is going to come much later, where we're going to light 36 candles. So to make that connection, when you read in the Torah, you'll see the 4 tagim on the tet. V'tiknu lamed vav neirot keneged lashon or umorot v'ner. And there's another reason why there are 36 candles, because the word or, whether in the form of or me'orot, or ner, or neirot, is mentioned in Nizkar b'Torah, lamed vav pa'amim. You'll find it 36 times in the Torah. If you scan the whole Torah, you'll find the word light or candle appearing 36 times. Again, drawing our attention to Hanukkah and connecting, bridging the 36, the light, the Or HaGanuz, the light of full clarity that existed initially, and the light of Hanukkah. So where is it Ganuz? Where is it buried? Have you figured out the map? From the Rakach, you should be able to figure it out. The Bnei Yisachar figures it out from the Rakach. Where is it buried? In the Torah, in the 36 Masechtas. Absolutely, there are more than 36 Masechtas in Shas, but only 36 have Gemara. It's in the 36 volumes of Gemara. It's in the Torah. The 36 words of light are scattered around the Chumash. You've got to find them in the Torah. That's where you'll find it. You want the Or HaGanuz, you'll find it in the pages of the Gemara. That's where you'll find the Or HaGanuz. You'll find it in the pages of the Chumash, if you learn the Chumash carefully enough. That's where you'll find the Or HaGanuz. And it's very interesting. There's one of the Perushim on the Bnei Yisachar who quotes the Rokeach, brings also from an early Hasidic source that the way to discover the Or HaGanuz, this hidden light, to search the Torah for matmonim. He uses the word. You've got to search the Torah for matmonim, and then you'll find the Or HaGanuz. You'll get that clarity. You'll see the world as it really is. You'll understand. If you can crack the code open, if you can learn a piece of Torah and find the meaning in it, not learn the piece of Torah and superficially so you know some information and some facts, and this one says that, and this one says that, there's a machloka so and so and so and so, and the halacha is like this. That way you're not going to find the Or HaGanuz. You need to be able to crack it open, like splitting the atom. Take one little atom and all that energy is there if you can split it open. And so it is with the Torah. If you can take a piece of Torah and you can open it up and find the light inside it, find the matmon, you will release this energy into the world, not just yourself, but you release energy into the world when you do that. Then splitting the atoms of the Torah. And when's the time to do that? When's the easiest time to do that? Is the month of Kislev. And I just noticed that the Matmonim series started in Kislev 3 years ago. It wasn't deliberate or anything, but the idea came and was put into practice in the month of Kislev. 6 months ago. 36 months ago, exactly. Isn't that amazing? Isn't it beautiful? That this 36 months ago, in the month of Kislev, we decided and called it the Matmonim. Just the idea came to me, and literally in a moment, and I just liked the idea of the Matmon, and we started, and that's how it started. And here we sit understanding the month of Kislev and realizing that's the time to start looking for Matmonim, because that's where you'll find the segula of Kislev, the energy of Kislev. Doesn't mean you can't find it any other time of the year, of course not. It just means Kislev gives you the energy you need to be able to do this in Torah. Comes from the month of Kislev and from Hanukkah specifically. Now let's get to the month of Kislev, which through unlocking this energy, what happens when you unlock the energy? When you unlock the energy, Nisim happen. That's when miracles happen. What is a miracle? A miracle is a release of supernatural energy. If the energy is natural, then it's not. Then it's nature. It's still amazing. It's still wonderful. But a nes is when there's a release of supernatural levels of energy. Let's understand the word nes. What word do you see in nes? What is the word? What is the linkage to what comes to mind? Association of it. You see the word nes. What word do you see?
Flag.
A flag. A nes is a banner, which we'll come to in a moment, or nisayon. A nes is a nisayon. It's a nisayon. If it's an incredible nes, like the splitting of the Yam Suf or Matan Torah, thank you, then it's a nisayon for us to be able to take the nes and live with it and do something with it and hold on to it. But a nes can also be something negative. A nes is not always, sometimes it's a nisayon. And it's important for us to understand, and what I'm going to say could easily be misunderstood, so hear me out, especially if you're listening online, to understand what I'm getting at. To me, what's happening at the moment in Israel and in the world are the biggest nisim I've seen in my lifetime. I can only talk about my lifetime. I've never lived in a time of such nisim. But the nisim aren't all wonderful. Nisim don't have to always be pleasant. Sometimes a nes is not pleasant, but it's still a nes. So, for example, to me, one of the biggest nisim of this time is something that nobody has yet been able to explain to me, although I've asked many people. How could Israel not have known? How could we have been caught by surprise? And yeah, Netanyahu keeps on saying there'll be inquiries, I'm looking forward to the inquiries because I don't know if we're going to find a satisfactory answer. To me, that was a nes. It was nothing short of a nes. This was supernatural. This was not natural. Now, this was a nes for which we had to pay an incredible, horrible price of korbanot. I think the Holocaust was a nes too. What do I mean by a nes? It's not natural. It's not natural what happened. For one Meshuggah to be able to convince the entire world to wipe out it's not natural. It can't be explained logically. If it can't be explained logically, it's a nes. Nes, we must get out of our heads that nes always means that it's a treat. Sometimes a nes it's a nisayon. All we know is it wasn't natural. It wasn't natural that we weren't prepared on October the 7th. It just wasn't natural. I've asked people in the military, I've asked people in the Shabak, I've asked people who've connected to the Mossad. Nobody has been able to say to me that, not only haven't they been able to give me an explanation, they've all said we can't understand it, it doesn't make sense. We don't understand it, how it could have happened. I know somebody whose job was that fence, no longer in the army, but that was his job. He said, I know that fence intimately. It's not possible that they were caught by surprise. Can't be. I don't sleep at night, he said, because I can't work it out. So why was it a nes? Because if anything less had happened than what did happen, we wouldn't be where we are today. We would be where we were on October the 6th. In the sense that on October the 6th, we were all worried. Put your mind back to October the 6th and the 9 months before. We were all asking questions about, is Eretz Israel sustainable? Can we hold on to it? Or are we going to implode from within? Is the divisiveness and the hatred and the people who were leaving in Israel and the people who said they will desert the army and the people who were taking their money out and persuading other people to take their money out and the people who were working with the media around the world. There was such a destructive force from within. And within 1 hour on October the 7th, everything changed. Now, had I said to you on October the 6th, I said to you, don't worry about the protests and don't worry about the right wing and don't worry about the left wing. There's going to be a miracle and in a moment, we're all going to come together. It'll all be okay. Don't worry. We're all going to come together. You would have said to me, you're a dreamer. Not going to happen. This is the end of Israel, as all the experts were saying. The end of Israeli society as we know it. And within 1 hour, everybody comes together. Is that not a nes? Now, I'm not going to talk about the korbanot, that's for another time when we're not in such pain, about the sacrifices and what that meant and why. But the fact that something happened that is inexplicable, that resulted in our coming together in a way that couldn't have been predicted, at a time when we were about to implode from within, tell me those are not nisim, that those aren't miracles. And tell me that hundreds of thousands of people who've left Israel in the last few years, because it's becoming too religious or because it's too right or because it's not what it used to be, for whatever reason. And off they're going to Portugal and to France and to Germany and to Greece and to Cyprus, let alone to America. Tell me it's not Nissim that they're coming running back. That the Rebbeinu Shalom brings in an instant a level of global anti-Semitism that we haven't seen since the 1930s. And the Rebbeinu Shalom within moments turns a switch and everybody feels, I would rather be fighting Hamas than fighting anti-Semitism overseas. And they come back. So we're living in a time we don't understand the miracles yet. It's all too fresh, but we've got to recognize these are miracles. And remember, they started in Mar Cheshvan. Technically, it was still Tishrei, but the time of our trouble started in Mar Cheshvan. Kislev is going to be the time of Nes. And what does Nes mean? Let's go into the Gemara in Brochus says, Omer Rabbi Yochanan mipnei ma lo ne'amar nun ba'ashrei. Why is there no nun in Ashrei? We've got the whole alphabet, we've got no nun. Mipnei sheyesh ba mapalatan shel sonei Yisrael. Because the word nun in the Tanakh references the fall. Nun for nefilah references the fall of the Jewish people. Dichtiv nafla lo tosif kum betulat Yisrael. Because the Novi says in Amos, the Bnei Yisrael have fallen and will be unable to stand again until they come back from the Galut. I was giving a nevuah. Things have gotten so bad, Israel will have to be destroyed and it'll have to start again some other time. Had I looked at this posuk carefully on October the 6th, I would have trembled in fear that the posuk was talking about our time. You will not be able to get yourself up together again. What is will have to be destroyed and you will have to start again with a new thing. I would have trembled in fear. At b'ma'arava metaltzila hachi. The Yerushalmi, our Gemara says that the Yerushalmi learns it differently and learns the posuk nafla v'lo tosif lin polod. The phrases the verse differently and says, you have fallen. Lo tosif, no longer will you fall. Kum betulat Yisrael. It's time to get up, O Yisrael. So there are two ways of learning the posuk. The posuk could mean you've fallen so low you can't get up, or you've fallen so low it's time to get up. Says the Gemara, Omer Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Afilu achi chazar David v'samchan beruach hakodesh. David with his ruach hakodesh puts the nun back into Ashrei in the next pasuk. Shneimar, Somech Hashem l'chol hanoflim. Hashem will support those who have fallen. So we've got this idea of nefilah, we've got the nun with the falling, and we've got the samach, which is the support. Now look at a matmon in the Sefer Yetzirah. The Sefer Yetzirah is the book of Kabbalah that, as you know, we attribute to Avraham Avinu, some say to Adam HaRishon, but it goes back a long time as to when the content of it was formulated much later, but when were the ideas put together of the Sefer Yetzirah at the time of Avraham or earlier? And the Sefer Yetzirah explains, and we'll use this in future Rosh Chodesh Shiurim as well. Shtei Misrei Pshutot. There are 12 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Yesodan chekakan chetzavan sarfan shaklan vehimiran v'tzar bahem shnei maser mazalot. Hashem develops each of these letters. He carves and molds and energizes, and then attaches them to one of the 12 constellations. Ba'olam shnei masar chodashim b'shana, to one of the 12 months of the year. Manhigim benefesh achar and nekeva, and to parts of the human body as well. Sefer HaYetzirah goes on to say, Mar Cheshvan, Himlich ot nun bereach v'kashar lo keter v'tzarfan ze b'ze v'tzar bahem akrav ba'olam v'cheshvan b'shana. We can't go into all of the Cheshvan piece at the moment, but what's important is nun is the letter for Cheshvan, and what does nun stand for? Nefilah, falling. Nun is the letter for Cheshvan, and the scorpion is the constellation. And that's scary. Cheshvan. Kislev. What's the letter for Kislev? Himlich ot samach b'shena. Hashem uses the samach and the power of sleep. So it's the power of smell is in Cheshvan. The power of sleep is in Kislev. We won't have time to talk about the Shena, but it's the samach. V'tzar bahem keshet, and Sagittarius is the constellation. There's the bow and arrow. V'kislev b'shana v'keva b'nefesh zachar nekeva. And these 2 months are next to each other. Nun and Samach. Nes. Cheshvan first with a Nefilah, and then Kislev with a Samach. What does a Samach mean? A Samach is a circle. So a Samach encircles, and there are two words associated with Samach. Sovev, which means to surround, to protectively surround, Sovev, and people talk about a Sviva. You've got to be careful with the Sviva you live in, be careful with the environment that you live in, because it protects you, the Sviva protects you. Sovev is the protecting fence around you, and it also has the word of Somech Noflim, as we've said, Somech Hashem B'chol HaNoflim. It supports and it protects. That's what the Samach is. And the Keshet, what is the bow? So the bow and arrow is very interesting, because the Keshet, there are two aspects. The word Keshet has two meanings. One is a bow and arrow, a bow, as per bow and arrow. What else does the Keshet mean? The rainbow. And the rainbow is as if it's a dome over the earth, protecting it. So again, the Keshet is protecting. It's a weapon of protection. The bow, and you see that they used the bows and arrows in the castles. They would shoot down when the castles were being attacked. The fortresses were being attacked. They would use the bows and arrows to repel the attackers. They wouldn't use cannons. That was a different thing. That's what they used, the bows and arrows. And so the Keshet over the world is this dome of protection. And what's important about the bow and arrow is, where does the archer stand when he shoots his bow? If you think of these old fortresses, where is he? He's inside the fortress, shooting the bow outside the fortress. These are like rockets, like missiles. They get shot. It's not like tanks where you've got to stand relatively close, and rifles you've got to be close with. The bow and arrow is a rocket. It's a missile. It's a projectile. You send this thing off, and it travels far in an arc. That's how it travels. The idea being you can send it from your own area. Isn't it interesting that that's what Hamas does? They send their rockets from their bedrooms, from their nursery schools, from their hospitals. You can do that with a rocket. You can't do that with a conventional army. You need a whole army. Where are you going to put a tank? Where are you going to put cannons? Where are you going to put 1,000 infantry people? You can't do that. It's rockets. It's the Keshet that allows you to do that. So the bow here has two elements, and I want to read to you a piece of Rabbeinu Bechaya. הקשת הוא כלי מלחמה, ונקרא קשת לפי שאינו מורה חיצים, אלא כשאדם מקשה היתר שבו. It's called the keshet because you can only sell it from kasher. You can only send the arrow off if you harden, if you stiffen the string. And when you see it from the heaven, the feet are on the ground. It's a dome. The 2 feet are on the ground, and then you have a dome. If it was the other way around, if you had the dome at the bottom and the 2 feet upwards, it would look like Hashem is shooting at us. But the other way around is on the contrary. It's Hashem putting his arrow down and saying, no, I'm not shooting. This is our opportunity to protect ourselves. What Hashem is giving us is the power of protection. And that's what the keshet is. This form of the keshet is a sign of shalom and a sign of peace. And you don't see the string at all. All you see is the bow itself. So what do we have here in the month of Kislev, coming after the month of Teshvan, which is Scorpio and Nefilah with a nun? A difficult month. That's why we call it Mar Cheshvan. That's why it has that name. Most years we don't feel it. We're insensitive to that energy. But this year we felt what Mar Cheshvan really is. What is it? That bitterness of Cheshvan, the Scorpio of Cheshvan, and the power of Cheshvan in its negativity, and that flows into the month of Kislev. And Kislev also means Kes Lamed Vav. You asked about the word. Kes is from Lechasot. The 36 lights are covered. Kislev Lamed Vav. The 36 lights of the Ora Ganuz are hidden and covered, and in Kislev they can be brought out. We can uncover them in Kislev. we can discover this light and bring out this energy. And we've got the Keshet, we've got the Sagittarius, and we've got the Samach as the energy of the time, the Smicha, the support, the Samach, the protection. That's what Kislev is. It's this time of being embraced by Hashem, protected by Hashem, so that we can find this Or HaGanuz within ourselves and within the Torah and through the lighting of our Hanukkah lights. And so we need to be sensitive as we transition from Heshvan, where we've just been, into Kislev, where we go now. At that moment of transition, we've got to be tuned in to being able to see. I'm not suggesting that there aren't hard times ahead of us, but that bitterness that was initiated in Cheshvan is now enabling us from the Nefilah to stand up again and to be able to feel the smicha, to feel the support of Hashem. You've got to allow yourselves to feel it. If you don't let yourselves feel it, you won't feel it. It will pass you. Same as we said in learning, a moment of intuition, a moment of a flash of insight passes in an instant. And so these times also pass. You've got to use these times to feel the energy of Cheshvan passing and Kislev entering. And with the feeling of that energy, and to use that energy in your tefillot, when you daven with a Kislev energy. We've been davening with a very sad Cheshvan energy. We've now got to start with an optimistic Kislev energy, with a different energy. We've got to try and learn in a way, whatever we're learning, each of us, whether we're learning Chumash or we're davening or we're learning Gemara, to try and find the Or HaGanuz. Don't just rush through it. Pick one sentence to dwell on. Just take one sentence. You can't dwell on the whole thing. There isn't time to do that. You're davening on Shabbos or on a weekday, you can't dwell on the whole davening. You don't have that time. But you can take one sentence in the Psukei de Zimra, or one verse, one sentence out of the Birkas Kriya Shema, or one sentence out of Kriya Shema itself, one sentence out of the Gemara you're learning, out of the Tehillim you're saying, and just pause. Spend a little time with it and find the Or HaGanuz. Find that light, because when you crack it open and you get the light out, the light goes everywhere. That's Kislev. It beams everywhere at the speed of light. And every person does that. That's why we all light these Hanukkah lights, and they give light all over the world. But it's not just the Hanukkah light, that's just the metaphor and one of the tools of doing it. It's in everything we do in our lives in Kislev. Look for the light. Listen for the beautiful stories that are coming out of the world. Listen for the heroism. Listen for the tzidkut. Listen for the righteousness. Listen for the miracles. That's the light. That's the Or HaGanuz. Focus on those things. Yes, there's bad news as well. We're going to hear that as well. That goes, put that into the Cheshvan box. Keep a box of Cheshvan handy, and whenever you get bad news, put it in the Cheshvan box. And live in the Kislev place for the next month. Stay in Kislev. And Kislev leads us to Tevet, to Shvat, and to Adar. We'll learn as we get to these months. They're all beautiful, positive months. Leave Cheshvan behind. And as I say, have it handy. It has a role, because you need a place to put the bad news. You need a place. You've got to be goynez the bad. The same as the Rebbeinu Shalom was goynez. He hid, he buried the magnificent light. We've got to bury the bad news. And not forget about it. We can't forget about the fact that we have shvuyim. We can't forget about the fact that we have pitzuim, we have wounded people. Can't forget about the fact that we've lost people and we're losing people. Can't forget about that. That's incredibly painful, and we need that pain. But keep that pain in the Cheshvan box, so that while that's happening, we can focus on the Nisim, we can focus on the miracles, we can focus on Kislev, we can take the Kisui away, we can take the Kaf Samach away, take off the covering and expose the Lamed Vav, expose the 36 lights of the Or HaGanuz in everything that we do, to bring that positive energy. And when we're speaking to people, try not to spread the bad news. If we're sharing with the world out there, sometimes it's necessary to give them the bad news, because they've forgotten about October the 7th already. It doesn't exist in the eyes of the world anymore. So we have to, unfortunately, feed them with that. But for ourselves and our own families and communities, feed the Or HaGanuz. Feed them with light, as much light as you can. It's not about being Pollyanna-ish. We've got a box. Pollyanna didn't have a Cheshvan box. We've got a Cheshvan box. We acknowledge it's there. But we have this unbelievable ability to put Cheshvan and Kislev next to each other and live in them both with one foot in Cheshvan and one foot in Kislev. And what happens when you take the Nun of Cheshvan and the Samach of Kislev and you live with both of them, the box of Cheshvan and the light of Kislev, and you live with them both? What do you have? Nice. Nun Samach. That's when you get a miracle. If you forget about the hardship, there are no miracles. If you forget about the fact that you were in Mitzrayim, you don't have a Kriyas Yamsuf. If you forget about the fact that you were in Mitzrayim, you don't have a Har Sinai. You can't forget about the struggle. You can't forget about the cost. You can't forget about the korbanot, because that's what gives it value. What we've paid, what we've sacrificed. It's got to be worthwhile. But at the same time, to be living with the light and to be living in Kislev, that's when we're able to create Nisim. That's when we're able to create the miracles that we're going to see in Eretz Hashem, that will turn the world upside down, that will turn Eretz Israel back into what it's meant to be and take us away from those Cheshvan months, not just 1 month of Cheshvan. We've had a year of Cheshvan. And to take us away, maybe more than a year of Cheshvan, to take us away from that into a future that is typified by Kislev. And right now, as we stand on Rosh Chodesh, this is the beginning of tomorrow. This is the beginning of the future. This is the beginning of a time of light and enlightenment and insight, where we will understand things in ways we haven't before and live together in shalom, in peace, in happiness, in service of Hashem, on the level that we weren't able to do before.